This is the fourth video. Fourth video in the Gender Cake series. So if you haven't seen the first three, please check those out. This one is the one about gender identity, okay? So as a reminder, me explaining this whole column, what all those words mean and phrases, I do that in the Gender Cake overview video. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out first so you're not confused, because I'll be referencing it a lot in this series. Alright, so before we get into it, I want to talk about how I came up with this cake idea, kind of, because I have always seen nuance in situations, and when I see content about gender and sex that is political, there seems to be a missing puzzle piece, and that has been the case regardless of whether that content is coming from the left, the political left, or the political right. And that's why I have been so hell-bent on making content for other people about this. I've started making content about this a few years ago on TikTok, and I ended up getting an entire account deleted because people thought I was being bigoted. They didn't actually bother to watch the videos. They just listened to someone else calling me that. You know how the internet is. But people aren't really used to nuance. That's my point, okay? So something that the political right wants to do is prioritize biogender and completely destroy the concept of gender identity. Just completely erase the gender identity tier from the cake and make it non-existent. Okay, but then the political left wants to completely erase the biogender tier from the cake and just focus on gender identity. And I was able to zoom out and be like, that doesn't sit right with me, because both of these are like tiers of a cake, and that's where the cake idea comes from. I was like, these both have so much value, and I think that, you know, one of my life missions is to bring groups together, and I truly feel from the bottom of my heart that from the bottom of my heart that I can explain this information in a way that makes everybody feel seen, makes everybody feel understood, and doesn't make anyone feel othered. Okay? And in order to do that, I created this cake diagram that I am now in the fourth out of 6 videos explaining to you. So, without further ado, we are now going to discuss how gender identity and biogender can be best friends. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the chart, if you saw the Gender Cake overview video, then you saw a very simplified version of the chart that I'm about to go over today. Please keep in mind, that was like the 101 class, okay? This is the fucking master's degree. Okay, so if you are a biological female, there is a chance, based on what I've seen on the internet, that you are already offended by what you see right now, okay? Me explaining the difference between cisgender and transgender. You might be rolling your eyes. You may have already clicked out of this video, but if you haven't, I encourage you to stay into the end for this reason. There is another video on here that I just finished, the biogender video, and in that video I said that there were 2 genders. In the video before that, the biological sex video, I said that there were 2 sexes, and I went on to explain what I meant by that and why that is not an offensive statement. And you, upon hearing me say that, are probably like, yes, go on. Okay, well, if you can understand the importance of me making that content, then I would appreciate it if you could understand the importance of me making this content, and do yourself the service of just hearing me out, okay? Because I have opinions that are so nuanced, it pisses off the political right and the political left, which you may have guessed from the beginning of this video. So at least hear me out before you form your negative opinion, okay? You do not have to identify or opt in to an identity of cisgender. I'm just using it to explain what this chart is, in the same way that people do not have to opt in to being a man or a woman to understand that biogender is still an important tier of the cake. That being said, I'm going to explain the concepts of cisgender and transgender in a way that you've probably never heard discussed before. What are you used to? You are probably used to people saying that the difference between cisgender and transgender is, well, the doctor said you were a girl or a boy, and if you agreed with that, you're cisgender, and if you disagreed with that, you're transgender, right? Some version of that. And while that is true, more or less, that is not the direction that I'm going with my explanation that I'm giving today, okay? My explanation is this. Cisgender people, as a rule, feel that gender is an emotionless description, okay? That's what we think. And transgender people believe that gender is an emotionally charged feeling. These two belief systems are important to wrap your head around right away. That's why it's the first part of the video, and it's quite a long video. But these two situations are going to come up again and again and again. They are really the roots of everything else that I talk about for the rest of this video. The entire tier of this cake is rooted in these two concepts. Cisgender people, again, as a whole, believe that gender is an emotionless description, and transgender people believe that gender is an emotionally charged feeling. Okay? Moving on. So, that then brings up the question, for cisgender people, what is the emotionless description of? And for transgender people, what is the emotionally charged feeling about? Excellent question. These words, okay? For me personally, as a cisgender woman, gender is an emotionless description because when someone refers to me as a woman, I don't have any emotional reaction to that because it's not an emotionally charged word. I don't have feelings that influence my identity in terms of being a woman or not being a woman, okay? However, transgender people feel differently. So, for me, feelings about my biogender can lead into gender expression, but my feelings about my biogender do not change how I feel when it comes to the gender itself. So, for example, I would never say I feel like a woman because I don't know what that means. And that I'm saying that with the utmost respect. If someone were to ask me, Embra, do you feel like a woman today? I don't know what that is because it's not an emotionally charged word for me at all. I don't have any feelings when it comes to that. Now, if you were to ask me, how do you feel about being a woman? Well, on any given day, the answer is also neutral, right? If someone is being sexist toward me, then my feelings would be annoyed. I would be annoyed. But that wouldn't make me feel less like a woman because I don't know what that means. I cannot possibly acknowledge that as a personal reality for myself because I don't know what it means. Okay? However, I respect other people and I do understand that other people would know what it means. And if you were to ask a transgender person, what does it feel like to be a woman? What does it feel like to be a man? They would have an answer for you. I don't have an answer for you. Okay? And that's the big difference. And that is a direction of this conversation that I haven't really heard other people talk about. And that's why it's so important for me to talk about it, okay? So transgender people, their feelings about biogender lead into gender identity, which of course is like a stepping stone into gender expression, right? But they're not skipping straight to gender expression the way cisgender people are. If I, for example, decided to, let's say I can't grow a full beard, so let's say I had a fake full beard, and let's say I, dressed in traditionally masculine clothing and tried to lower my voice as much as I could, just because that's what I fucking felt like doing that day, okay? Let's say I did that. That would not mean that I feel less like a woman. That would mean that I feel less feminine, which is not the same thing. Feeling masculine or feminine, not the same thing as feeling like a man or feeling like a woman, which is the whole point that I'm getting into with this document that I'm showing you now, okay? So that leads us right into the next part of the conversation, which is explaining the difference between binary and non-binary and how both of those fit on this chart. So I've already said that I'm a cisgender woman. We are going to talk about what binary means, okay? Binary means two, kind of like bisexual, right? Bicentennial, bi-weekly. And what are the two in question? Man and woman, woman and man, okay? That is the bi in the binary. But what does that mean? What goes in the boxes? Because as of right now, if we were to just take a snapshot of what you see on the screen at this moment, there's no difference, right? Cisgender woman, man, transgender woman, man, what's the difference? We are about to talk about the difference. We are going to fill up these boxes, okay? So, pause. The word feels, F-E-E-L-S, is in all four of these boxes on purpose, okay? Because feelings are an important factor in this conversation for both parties. However, what the feelings are related to is different. Because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can feelings have anything to do with cisgender when you just freaking told us, Embra, you just told us that feelings have nothing to do with this. You just told us that cisgender people see gender as an emotionless description. That is correct. You have an excellent listening ear. The feelings are about masculinity and femininity, not the gender itself. And that's the difference. A cisgender binary woman feels 100% feminine 100% of the time. A cisgender binary man feels 100% masculine 100% of the time. Pause. I need to make very clear that everyone has their own personal definition of what 100% means. There is no purely objective 100% masculine or 100% feminine. That is not a thing, okay? When I am at my most feminine, and I would feel my definition, my personal definition of the most feminine that I could ever possibly be, which, by the way, has never been depicted anywhere on the internet. But even that would not be considered feminine enough for some people. Because there are some people out there who think a woman cannot be at her maximum femininity unless she is wearing a dress. And if she's wearing pants, that means she's not feminine enough. Okay? There are some people out there who think that a man cannot be 100% masculine wearing a skirt. Because I guess they've never heard of the Scottish. So that's what I want you to keep in mind when you look at these definitions. I am not the grand arbiter of what 100% masculine and 100% feminine is. Because these are things that people are deciding for themselves. Okay? So everyone is self-selecting into what their definition for this is. That's important to note. So, a woman who is cisgender and binary feels her personal definition of 100% feminine 100% of the time. And a cisgender binary man feels his definition of 100% masculine 100% of the time. All right? Now, let's go up to the other side, transgender. A transgender binary woman feels like a woman 100% of the time. A transgender binary man feels like a man 100% of the time. Now, if you're going to ask me to explain what that means, I cannot. Okay? It's on the chart because I believe it's a valid way to identify, and I don't think it's fair to not include someone's situation on the chart just because I can't personally identify with it. But don't ask me what it means because, again, as I said earlier, I do not acknowledge gender as a feeling in the first place, so I can't tell you what that means. If someone were to say, do you feel like a woman? I don't know what that is. Okay, I can tell you if I feel masculine or feminine in any given moment. I can tell you if I feel more feminine than masculine or more masculine than feminine. What I cannot tell you is if I feel like a woman, because that's not an emotionally charged statement for Embra. All right? So, we good so far? I hope so. This is not a live video, so we're just going to say it is. You can leave a comment if you're confused, but please hold your comments until the end of the series, not the video, because I got a lot to say. All right. Again, let me remind you, feelings are very important, a very important part of this conversation. That's why the word feels is in all 4 of these boxes. It's just that the feeling is referencing something different depending on which side of the chart we're discussing. So for cisgender people, the feels in question are referencing the gender expression part of this cake, which we haven't gotten to yet, and we'll get to in a further in the next video after this one. And the transgender people, when they use the word feels, they are referencing the gender identity section of the cake. So keep that in mind. Everybody's feeling feelings, but what the feelings are in reference to are going to be different depending on whether a person is cisgender or transgender. Okay? Okay. Now, let's get back into this chart because we are going to go to the next section. Now that we've discussed binary, which I feel like is a pretty easy concept to understand, we're going to ratchet it up a little bit because we are now going to talk about something that is slightly harder for people to wrap their heads around, which is non-binary. And right away, you might be confused. You might be thinking, well, Embra, hold on. I've done some rudimentary study of these concepts, and I know that you cannot be cisgender and non-binary at the same time. Pause. Yes, you can. Let me tell you a little story. There is a reason why my very first video on this channel was about being transgender. There is a reason why I've gotten an entire account deleted from discussing these things, why I'm so passionate about discussing these things and have been for years. And that reason is I have been thinking very deeply about my own gender identity for a very long time. And I'm going to tell you a little story, okay? Story time. When I was a little girl, I was told that little girls had long hair and little boys had short hair. And that's why I wasn't allowed to cut my hair short. And every time I went to the beauty salon, I would ask, can I have my hair cut short this time? And every single time, I would get a no. Because little girls have long hair and little boys have short hair. And I was very, very angry about this. Because even as a very small child, I was like, this is nonsense. This is absurd. I'm a girl, whether I have long hair or short hair, and it's just going to grow back. It's not like it can't grow back later. Which, of course, were arguments that I made, right? But my arguments didn't do anything. I still wasn't allowed to get my hair cut. And this frustrated me so much because I didn't understand what being a girl had to do with having long hair. And the answer is absolutely fucking nothing. Nothing. And little things like this would happen a lot. I gave you one example because we ain't gonna be here all day talking about my childhood trauma, okay? That's maybe a different... That's TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok if you want to talk about that, okay? But anyway, I said that story to let you know that I've always been pretty gender non-conforming. I mean, I have the sides of my heads too. I have the sides of my head shaved, and I've loved the look of that. As soon as I realized that I could just do whatever I want and it would be fine, I was like, hell yeah. I remember another thing that happened when I was a little kid is I would always get made fun of for like having this peach fuzz here. This camera is a really low quality camera. You probably can't even see it. But I had, like, ever since puberty, you know, I've had this little peach fuzz. And I remember being so obsessive about keeping it shaved and also keeping my eyebrows shaved. The middle section, you know, because I've always been a hairy gal, okay? And the reason why I was obsessed with doing that is because I would get made fun of. Usually by boys, oddly enough. I don't have any memories of girls making fun of me for that, so what does that say? But anyway, it always made me feel so icky, like, oh my god, none of the boys are gonna like me if I have a widow mustache. It was, and I wasn't allowed to, okay, maybe we are gonna talk a little bit about my childhood trauma. I wasn't allowed to shave my legs as a kid. And by kid, I don't mean like 7 years old. I mean like 8th grade, okay? And I felt so icky about it because it was super hot. I lived in the South, and I had shorts, but I hated wearing shorts to school. And I remember one of my 7th grade teachers social studies teachers was talking about health, and he was talking about like how hygiene was important and how shaving your legs was part of hygiene for girls. And I was wearing shorts that day. They were blue, I remember. And I just remember like hugging my like legs and like trying to not draw attention to myself, because I was like, oh my god, no one's ever gonna like me. I have so many stories about things like that, oh my god. But anyway, these things helped me in the long run, because it just gave me fuel. It just gave me ammo to be like, you know what, fuck these societal standards, I don't give a fuck. And that's kind of where I settled on, okay? Now, I said all that to say that whenever the concept of non-binary, or the word, let's say, the concept has been around much longer than the word, but when the word first started cropping up, I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. But everyone who was identifying as non-binary was also identifying as trans, because they disagreed with what the doctor said, right? However, I was confused, because I was like, I mean, so the doctor said I was a girl. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any emotion about it. It's not an emotionally charged statement. Like, I don't have any issue whatsoever with being a woman. So I kind of felt like I wasn't allowed to opt in to calling myself non-binary, because it seemed like transgender and non-binary were a package deal and that they could not be separated ever. But then I started looking into stories, because that's one of the types of research that I've been doing for about 10 years, is looking into people who tell their personal stories, you know, people who identify as trans-binary, trans-non-binary. How did they come to that conclusion? What is their life story? Anyone who was willing to make content like that, I would eat it up, because I so badly wanted to understand all aspects of the human condition. You know, I've kind of been obsessed with that my whole life, is understanding the human condition, probably because the people in my life who were supposed to be in charge of me never really made an effort to understand my human condition. But you know what? Let's talk about that on TikTok. Anyways, so I figured out that I could just call myself whatever I want, because one of the rules of the gender ideology, regardless of which gender ideology you hold, but within this community, it's important to not tell people that they are wrong. Like, when they identify a certain way, it's bigoted to be like, you're wrong, you know? Like, let people call themselves whatever they want. And I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna respect other people, I think I should be respected too. So I kind of had a light bulb moment of, I'm just going to make a chart and explain to people that you can be cisgender and non-binary. Because as I was going through and looking at these stories, I would see people who identified as transgender but didn't have body dysphoria or any negative feelings about their biogender at all. And they were insisting, like, it's bigoted to tell me that I can't identify this way. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm thinking, if you don't have body dysphoria, then I don't understand how you can be trans. Maybe people are doing that because they don't realize that they can be both non-binary and cisgender, you know? And after I had that light bulb moment, I was like, oh crap, this is really important information for me to get out of my system. And I kind of had, for a long time, I had an aversion to making this long form content, because I was like, I've already had an entire account deleted because of talking about things like this, and people don't really like listening to the nuance of situations, and they don't really care for deep diving into a subject. They just hear a word that they don't like and then they report your video for hate speech. And that's happened to me so many times that I thought maybe I'll just not discuss that. But this is a really important topic to me, as you can probably imagine from my content, right? So I decided, you know what, let me just talk about whatever the fuck I want. And here we are. Maybe this will help people, therefore it's worth discussing. So that being said, yes, you can be non-binary and cisgender. I myself am non-binary and cisgender. So I am gender non-conforming, but I also have no negative feelings about my biogender. I can be a woman and a biological female, and that can be perfectly fine. And I can also have a full beard if I want. And that doesn't make me less of a woman, and that doesn't mean I feel negative feelings about being a woman also. That being said, non-binary, man and woman, what does that mean? Where does the non-binary come from? Because obviously we still have the binary man and woman, right? So where does the non part come in? Well, the non part comes in the box that I just filled up. A non-binary cisgender woman feels feminine or masculine at varying degrees in varying different situations. And same thing with a non-binary cisgender man, okay? He feels feminine or masculine at varying degrees in varying situations. So there are some times when I am feeling very masculine. Now, whether or not you, random stranger from the internet, would perceive me as masculine just because I'm feeling that way, who knows? Who cares? Not my problem, okay? But that doesn't change the reality of the situation, okay? How I feel is how I feel. How I am perceived is how I am perceived. They may not necessarily be the same thing, and that's okay. Hopefully we're all on the same page now, because we are going to talk about the fourth category, which is non-binary and transgender. And this is what it looks like. It's not 2 boxes, it's 3. Oh, what is this red thing for? Oh, I think I had this red thing because I was explaining that I was in this category, maybe? Excuse me. Oh, I forgot about this slide. Okay, we're not going to talk about transgender, non-binary people yet, because I want to go a little bit further into the non-binary cisgender category. So here's what I want you to imagine. If you're struggling to imagine what this is like, imagine what society thinks of as masculine, whether that's in appearance or behavior. Okay? Imagine a giant checklist of everything that society deems as masculine appearance or masculine behavior. All right? Once you've got that in your head, also imagine a giant checklist of feminine behavior and feminine appearance. What does society think of as acceptable feminine behavior and acceptable feminine appearance? Get that in your head, giant checklist, okay? And let's just say, for simplicity purposes, that the masculine checklist is blue and the feminine checklist is pink. Someone who identifies as a cisgender non-binary person is basically cherry-picking items from both of these charts based on how they feel in that moment. Okay? So there are a bunch of different ways that this could look. In any given moment, someone from this chart, from this section of the chart, could decide on mostly the blue side and a couple of items from the feminine side. Or maybe switch it up and do mostly items from the pink side and a few items from the blue side. The desire to do that and the feeling that you are lying to yourself if you don't is kind of what puts you in this chart, you know? Like, if I felt like I would... Okay, example. I went to work. I used to work in a doctor's office, and there was only one man who worked in there, and he was one of the providers. The other provider was a woman, and then all of the other office workers, the MAs, were women. The office ladies, the receptionists, we were women, and then we had like the office manager, she was also a woman. So very, very feminine doctor's office, okay, for the most part. And I remember having a conversation with my boss one time, and I don't remember even how we got on this conversation, but I was talking about how I don't shave my legs. And she was like, you don't shave your legs? Like, she was genuinely confused about that. And to be fair, you know what? I do shave my legs when I fucking feel like it, which is rare, because I rarely feel the desire to. But I hadn't in like months at the time, because it had been so long since I had had the desire to shave my legs that I just was like, oh, I don't do that anymore, you know? And I remember my boss was so genuinely confused. And then I was confused at her confusion. Not shaving your legs is looked at as a masculine thing. Okay, it would be on the blue list. And that's one of the items that I plucked from the blue list. Same thing with my pits, okay? Hairy little bitches, right? And I'm like, why is this so important to people? My entire life, I've been so confused about why people put so much obsession on these topics, you know? And so that's just an example from my personal life. It's just I pluck what I want from each checklist depending on how I feel. And there's nothing wrong with me for that, and it doesn't make me less of a woman, and it doesn't mean I don't like being a woman. It just means that, again, being a woman is a completely separate tier to everything else. It is in the bio tier. It's completely separated from identity and expression, for me personally. So, like, the non-binary part is identity, which is why it's in this tier of the cake. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what I mean by that. Okay, now back to the bigger chart, because we can go into transgender non-binary and what that means. Again, I know I've said this, I think I've said this before, but if you disagree, that's totally fine. This is just a chart that I've made up based on 10 years of doing my own research, thinking about my own personal life, but also looking into other people's stories, other people's experiences, and how they see gender, how they see their own lives, and how gender, the concept of gender fits into their lives. So if you don't fit into this chart, I totally respect that, people. But I'm still going to say what I got to say, because almost everybody does fit into this chart. So that being said, there are 3 categories that I would put into the transgender non-binary section, okay? Obviously, I'm not going to call these people men or women because they don't feel like men or women, and that would be disrespectful in my opinion. Because again, the biogender tier is only for medical professionals and intimate partners and scientific studies, okay? So the identity tier is what we're talking about right now. And so it would be completely disrespectful for me to be like, I'm going to call you a man or a woman no matter how you feel. Like, that's fucked up, right? And so, obviously, putting man or woman in these categories would be rude. So there are other words to replace that give more accurate information. So those are the words that we're going to talk about today. So let's start with the left-hand side. Bigender, again, bi, two, feels 100% both genders at all times. So feels 100% like a man and 100% like a woman at all times. Again, don't ask me what that means because I do not, gender is not a feeling for me. I don't know what it means to feel like a woman, let alone to feel like a man and a woman. I know what it means to feel like a combination of masculine traits and feminine from the checklist that I showed you and asked you to imagine, but the concept of feeling like both genders or feeling like one gender is gibberish to me. However, I respect that there are people in this world who do assign a meaning to that, and they deserve to be depicted on this chart and respected, so I'm going to do it. So, bigender feels 100% both genders at all times. Agender feels 0% like a man and 0% like a woman at all times. And gender fluid feels like both or either in varying degrees and in varying situations. As you can see, very similar to the non-binary cisgender, that the difference is that, again, how did we start this video? Transgender people believe that gender is a feeling, and cisgender people believe that gender is an emotionless description. So the feelings in question are going to be very different. Even though just to look at someone, it might be very similar because the expression might be very similar in that moment. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit deeper into gender fluid because the first 2 categories, bigender and agender, are pretty self-explanatory, but the gender fluid category involves a lot of subcategories, of which I did not explain all of. Like, all of them have not been explained in this video, but this is already a very, very, very long video, and that's not my forte anyway, because I'm not part of this group. So go find a gender fluid person, I guess, if you want a complete umbrella explained to you. But just the general categories are the differences switching and sliding. So think of it like a light switch versus a dial, switching back and forth between two categories, or sliding back and forth between two categories. And we're not going to get super deep into that, but I just wanted to let you guys know that gender fluid is kind of a bigger umbrella than the other two. So I wanted to give you all an idea of what that is, because I feel like a lot of people who are going to be watching this have never heard of this concept before. This will be your first introduction into these words, and so I want to give you a little bit of an overview that's helpful. But if you want anything more in depth than this, please feel free to ask someone who identifies as such, because they would have an answer for you if you ask, like, what does it mean to feel this way? Because I don't know. Okay, so I know that I have this on a different presentation, but I'm putting it on this one as well. When someone tells you that they're happy, their face might not look the way you think, okay? So just because someone is expressing themselves a certain way does not mean that you are then given, based on that expression, definitive information about how they identify, okay? You're not always sure. And that is important to remember. All of these people are happy, as far as you know, because they're saying it, right? All 8 of these people are representations of people. They're not people, they're representations of people because they're smiley faces. Anyways, all of these representations of people are saying, I'm happy. So, cool. All right. You don't know, technically, just from those words, if they're lying or telling the truth. The people on the left hand, the representations of people on the left-hand side could be lying, okay? They could be this close to suicide, for all you know, okay? And the people on the right-hand side could be happier than they've ever been, ever. They just don't emote through their face very much. So you might not be able to see, based on their expression, how they feel. And that's okay, all right? So it's important to bring that information into this conversation about gender and gender identity as well. You can't necessarily tell what someone's identity is based on how they are expressing in that moment, and that's okay. All right, so we've gone over biological sex, gender, and gender identity. Here is a final look at this chart. And the next video that we are going to discuss is going to be gender expression, which is my favorite tier of the cake. I'm so excited about it. And I will be back with that next video very soon. I look forward to seeing your comments if you have any comments to leave. Bye.